In the last two expansions, the profession scene has been dominated by a certain few professions, and in the high-end rating, engineering has frankly been a requirement in order to even participate. It's of course not hard to see why. Nitro Boost will allow you to negate so many mechanics, and having a deterministic 1-minute DPS cooldown over static stats will almost always be a net benefit. And while you were maybe afforded some flexibility in the secondary profession slots, there were always clear outliers there as well. But with the profession changes in this Pandaria, surely that will change, right? Right? This is your Mr. Pandaria guide to professions. Now, this will be a guide purely focused on player power. Some of these professions will be a hell of a lot better than others for making gold, but on this channel, we care about blasting big numbers, and if you ever find yourself taking advice from me on how to get gold, then you need to reevaluate your life choices. While this is not necessarily a tier list video, we will be going through the professions from worst to best, while bunching up the professions that will offer the same value. So let's start with the professions that you'd like to avoid, and that would be skinning, herbalism, and mining. These professions retain their kata qualities in offering 2200 haste on use for herbalism, 480 stamina for mining, and 480 crit for skinning. Sure, you might make a lot of gold early on if you run these professions, but you want to swap them out before heading into raiding. In Kata, you could get away with running mining as the stamina was in line with the other options, and this is true this time around as well. However, tanks in Miss Pandaria will be much more interested in picking up secondary stats than just focusing purely on stamina like in previous expansions. These are of course great professions to have in your alts you don't really care about, but bots will probably oversaturate the market anyhow. Then we have the professions that give you 320 stats in one way or another with jewel crafting, inscription, enchanting, and alchemy. These professions will also give you the option of getting 480 stamina, but none of these professions are very interesting for tanks. Jewel crafting serves as a bit of an outlier in the possible stats they can provide, as they have both primary and secondary stats gems in their arsenal of jewel crafting specific gems, making it a little bit more attractive to tanks. Enchanting doesn't offer anything too interesting apart from disenchanting, and if you want to get access to strong enchants early, they'll be gated behind reputation. Alchemy gains the same bonuses in Cataclysm by boosting the quality and length of your flask, as well as providing you with a bottomless flask to use for whenever you're not using a fully crafted flask. The Alchemy Trinket this time around is a mini version of the Dark Moon deck trinkets, and it's actually really powerful early on, and stays relevant the entire expansion in challenge modes, as it doesn't get scaled down by item level. The trinket would honestly be the only reason why I would pick up Alchemy on a main character, unless you're looking to profit early on from the daily cooldown of Living Steel, but that certainly can be done on alts as well. Inscription will be a great alt profession for gold purposes, but more importantly, you can craft 476 staffs that are bound on account and will generally be your previous options, assuming you can use a staff as an agility or intellect user. They require 20 scrolls of wisdom, and these scrolls you can get at a rate of 1 per day through a daily cooldown. There are also 6 weekly quests, of which you can get 1 per week, which gives you 1 scroll of wisdom in exchange for some pretty expensive materials, with one of the quests giving you 2. Depending on luck and when the raid is released, you may or may not be able to get the staff before the raid is released. Cataclysm had a 10-day delay for the raid after the release and 11 in Wrath, so don't get your hopes up when it comes to using this weapon for the race. However, if you're raiding later in the week, or if you simply didn't get a weapon week 1, then this may be a great alternative to shoot for. If you realize you won't need it, you can turn the scrolls into Dark Moon cards and sell them at the auction house. Leatherworking also simply gives you stats as its bonus, but I did not include it with the previous professions, as it does not grant 320 primary stats. For whatever reason, since you get 500 stats from the Leatherworking Bracer enchant while being unable to use the 170 stat enchant, it gives you a total of 330 stats. Sure, 10 stats is not a lot, but I'll take DPS where I can find it. As with Cataclysm, there is no new stamina enchant on bracers, so Leatherworking will give you the biggest stamina boost by far compared to any other profession, with a whopping 750 stamina. We generally don't prefer to stack stamina, but there may be some niche use cases for where you'll be strong, and in those cases, Leatherworking will be king. And that takes us to the Outlier Professions. And a combination of these 3 professions will for most people be the best professions throughout the entire expansion. First is tailoring, and just like in Cataclysm, get a cloak enchant that will give you a proc of either 4000 attack power, 2000 intellect, or 3000 spirit. When averaged out to the other professions, it'll give you a similar value, but your DPS is not a static metric. Since you're trying to line up as many cooldowns as possible at once, having all of those stats front-loaded will grant you way more DPS, and as such, tailoring will offer the most value to most classes. 4000 attack power for tanks is certainly nothing to write home about in the context of MOP Vengeance, so avoid picking up tailoring as a tank. Blacksmithing will be the go-to profession for every single tank. It doesn't get anything new in MOP unless you count the new gear they can make, but all of those are BOE, so that doesn't really matter. But the reason why it's such a strong profession in MOP is because of jewel crafting. Let me explain. In MOP, gems give you 160 primary stats, but unlike previous expansions, the effect of secondary stats get doubled, so every individual gem gives you 320 secondary stats. As a tank, we already prefer secondary stats over primary stats, and with blacksmithing giving 640 secondary stats, this becomes the clear choice for those who prefer staying away from primary stats. The only other alternative for secondary stats is crit from skinning, which gives 480 while offering no flexibility, and jewel crafting, which gives you 320 secondary stats, effectively giving you half the value of blacksmithing. Then lastly, the profession that every single player should go for, engineering. Engineering has been the go-to profession for every single expansion until this point, so this comes as no surprise. In MOP, you'll keep Nitro Boost and a buffed version of Synapse Springs. Additionally, there'll be a new glove enchant for tanks giving 2880 dodge for 10 seconds, which may be something worth considering if you're playing a Repose class. For the first phase, you'll get a 476 item level helmet with 2 600 secondary stat slots, where you get to choose the stats, just like in Kata, and this helmet will be your previous option for most, if not all, classes. Lastly, this is the expansion where you get Goblin Gliders, but in MOP, it's limited to only be usable by the engineer as it's a tinker you put on your cloak. Assuming we can use this in Raid, there'll be certain mechanics that can be cheesed with this tinker, making engineering even stronger than previous expansions. Honorable mention, of course, is the BOE Dragonlink trinket, which is incredibly broken for how easy it is to acquire. If I were to put professions into a tier list, then this is how I would rank them. You may hear people saying that professions don't matter anymore, but that is certainly not true. I have a ton of Mists of Pandaria videos lined up, so if you want to stay up to date with those coming out, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But that's all for now. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time.